Hi, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Grooves of Influence. My name's Xavier, your host, and this week's guest is Nave. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Nev. I'm a independent music artist from the Midwest, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, like every episode, we start the same question. So, what is the most influential album to you?
For me, it's been Born to Die by Lana Del Rey. I discovered it when I don't even know how old I was actually, technically. But pretty young. Yeah, I just I love that album. Miss Del Rey.
Has it been an album that you've like just constantly kind of came back to throughout, growing up since you were a kid?
Yeah, definitely. I I feel like it's like very timeless. I think when I discovered it, I remember not liking like the pop music at that time. Which is like crazy because like I love pop music now. I consider myself like a pop artist for sure. And I think I remember at that time everything was just like very happy, and then like this album comes out and she's just like an old soul. Her like whole aesthetic, I think she definitely like paved the way for a lot of like the artists today, like especially like the female like pop artists today, I think. Um just really exploring like, emotional vulnerability and yeah, all the stuff. All while being like sexy at the same time. Like sad and sexy. So yeah, it's definitely an album to this day I still like blast it all the time.
Yeah, it's a classic for sure, for good
Yeah.
reasons. I mean, I think you kind of hit on some of the main themes of that album, just a very vulnerable honesty within her music, which makes it so likable, like it's so
hmm
honest and raw and real. Are those things you try to implement into your own music oftentimes?
Yeah, I think I remember like something about her that I've like seen her say is like everything she does is autobiographical, and I feel like that's like the best way to write from, I think. I think it's hard to not. And I think it shows, yeah, just authenticity, and I think she's like lived many lives, and her like crazy lyrics and her like aesthetic and her art like reflect that for sure. But yeah, it's authentic and it's real.
Yeah, were there like some standout tracks to you on this album that you just love?
That is so hard.
All of them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like obviously I've gone through like many phases of like the singles. I think I first discovered video games, and I remember seeing like the music video to that and just like being like, who is this woman? I like love National Anthem. That music video too is like very iconic. And I think the singles, all of them are like amazing and have like really stood out to me. Like the Paradise edition too of like that album. There's Ride.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of her songs are just iconic, definitely from that era. Like, it really developed who she was and is as an artist, and kind of, like you said, her aesthetic. I kind of plays into it. Like, listening to the album, I kind of got a feeling of like a sad, like broken princess story. If
Yeah.
that, if I don't, if that kind of makes sense. It's like a more realistic version of like the princess story where it's not pretty and it's very like raw and honest and it's crazy. And I was thinking that throughout the whole album, and then in her last song, which I thought the choice of the last song was um pretty cool. It felt like very anthemish. I don't
Mhm.
know if you kind of feel that too. um
For 'cause the last song, is it Bel Air?
uh
Or
on the original LP, This Is What Makes Us Girls.
oh yes, that's true. This is what makes us girls. I really, yeah.
It's very like anthemic kind of, and uh there's a line in there, um and it's like, we all look for heaven and put love first. And I was like, that kind of like very much sums up the album, where she's like looking for this like feeling through love, and it's just like failing throughout the album, like in these sad
Mm-hmm.
songs, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it's also interesting how she like utilizes like more upbeat production with sad songs, which is kind of an interesting take. Most times you think like sad songs and they're slow. How do you think that impacts the vibe of the album?
I I mean, the whole production too of it is like crazy. I feel like that was the first time I ever heard like cinematic like strings, and then there's like hip hop type beats, and um even just like some of the percussion too, I feel like with like all the reverb, and it just like it sounds, it's like very different. But I feel like yeah, she's just like romanticizing, like it's yeah, like it sounds like very, it's like sad and like this like certain aesthetic with like the lyrics. And then I don't know. I think like it just all works really well together
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you produce as well?
I do, yeah, I also
Okay.
produce. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So what kind of things do you draw out of this album? I know you mentioned those like lush strings, kind of hip hop beats. Is there like certain uh other aspects in the album that you're like kind of drawn to that you try to implement into your own music or
Yeah, I feel like I never noticed this. I think listening to this album again recently, I was like, oh shit, like I feel like I draw a lot without realizing it. I definitely am always like, oh, maybe like this would be better if there was strings or like some sort of like orchestra type vibes. A lot of like I've even tried doing like the percussion with like the reverb where it's just like fate, like I don't even know how, like echoing,
it's
that she
very in the
does.
back. It's very in the
Yeah,
back. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like it is hip hop-ish.
yeah.
Hip hop-ish.
Hip hop ish.
But it's definitely like sitting in the back, so it's not clean. So it's
Right.
not like you aren't getting like that super snappy snare.
Yeah.
Except on what song was it? That was like, oh, Diet Mountain Dew. That's very like boom, like kind of like old school like hip hop vibe. I was like, oh, this is definitely like a shift in her
Yeah.
sound for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever tried to go like more that route with your music, like kind of going more the hip hop route? You know?
I think it's funny because I think when I first started taking like music seriously, is like, okay, I'm gonna do this as like a career, like put music online, whatever. Really, I've always been a really big fan of hip hop and rap, and I thought I was like doing that in a way. I feel like everybody kind of does when they first start off. But I was like, oh, I think I'm like doing like hip hop. Like I would even play like hip hop rap shows. But when I was there, I would feel like too like indie art weird kid there. And then I don't know, it was kind of funny when I look back on it. Um, but yeah, I think I've always had a love for it for sure since I was like really young.
Yeah. What was the transition for you? Like you said, taking music seriously.
I think there's been like a lot of stages to it. I feel like even like in the most recent years, I kind of had to like take a step back and realize that like I wasn't exactly like taking it as serious as I thought I was. And then I look back at like the earlier years and I'm like, okay, this was like very amateur. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at all. And I was just like going with the flow of things, not really realizing the opportunities that were just kind of like happening at the beginning. But I think even in like the last few recent years, I think I like leveled up mentally where I'm like, okay, like this is a business. Like I am like a business. And um I think for independent artists too, like especially like you don't have like a big team to like rely on or anything like that. You're kind of like just using like your resources and like people that you know, your friends. So I think even in like the last like 2 years, I feel like I've had like a different mental like change for sure. And yeah, I think that just kind of probably keep happening.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's cool. It makes a lot of sense. So you kind of talked about a little bit a shift. What do you think caused that for you?
I think I don't know, I did move away from like everybody I know. I did recently like move states. I think it's been like 2 years now. And I just like left my hometown, and like I think that had a lot to do with it. I feel like I was able to just like reflect more and like really, like it sounds. very like corny, but like really focus on yourself, you know? Just like having a new perspective and seeing things different, with, like new eyes. I think that really made me realize it.
Like looking back at your music now that you've recently put out, do you see that shift in like kind of your music, like musically or lyrically?
I think so. Like I listened to like the first like project that I put out, and it feels like a different artist. And even like it's crazy. Even on like the latest release that I did, I'm already kind of like, okay, I feel like different from that even. Um with like the new stuff that's like unreleased that I'm working on, I feel like I'm already like in a different like headspace from that.
And what is your headspace? Where are you at?
I think just like I think where I want to like a visual world more of like where I want to take that. I think quality wise too. I think producing. I started to like go to like a recording studio now, and they're called Friends of Friends in Chicago, and working with other people too, like working with Brock there. He's the engineer, and even like co-producing. I feel like I learned so much from him, and just like how to challenge like production wise and quality wise, like how can we make this better? How can we like, yeah, just level this up basically.
And in your process of doing that, is it more like just coming out of you like naturally? Are you looking at projects like this album that Lana Del Rey put out for inspiration? Like, how does that kind of all balance out for you?
See, that's hard to say. I feel like subconsciously maybe I like look and I listen to albums like this. It's crazy how even after all these years listening to like albums like Born to Die, you're able to come back and hear it differently. You're like, oh, I never noticed that sound, or like maybe they use this like effect or whatever. And I feel like you kind of like subconsciously like take it when you create music. I think it's, yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. As you grow, you hear different things.
yeah,
Yeah, as you grow as an
yeah,
artist.
yeah.
It's very cool. I guess, and then I'm assuming you write your own songs as well, lyrically,
I
right?
do. Yeah.
Was there any like thing that stood out in this album with how she wrote her lyrics, to you as a songwriter that you're like kind of appreciate or just love, you know?
Yeah. I Lana's like such a poet at heart, I feel. I think like her music is so visual too, and like her writing is very visual. I mean, I feel like it's so crazy how like somebody like a writer like her, like people make jokes about like, oh, this like Lana Del Rey aesthetic vibe, these lyrics type of thing. Like I think it takes a lot. Like your own individual, like I don't even know how to like say what I'm trying to say.
Like share her own like unique style that like becomes
Yeah,
something like people can literally like see things and be like, you know, that reminds me of the way she writes and the music way her music makes me feel type of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, like she has a brand within like her lyrics, kind of, you know. I think that yeah, and just the way like her her writing is, I feel like that was when I like first discovered it, I was like, oh my gosh, like nobody writes like that at that time. Like nobody was writing like that at that time.
What were you listening to beforehand?
At that time I was like, I think I was probably like shit. My memory is so bad, especially like teenage years.
Hmm.
I was definitely like a preteen probably, and I remember I was like a snob, a music snob at that time, and I was like, oh, I'm too cool. I didn't like the mainstream pop music at that time, and I was listening to a lot of music from like the 60s and like 70s and even 50s actually. I was like really exploring just like older music. My dad also has been like a really big influence on me for like older music. He just like knows a lot of like facts and like yeah. When we both discovered YouTube, like he went crazy, you know what I mean? Um
What
so I
did he
was
listen? What did he listen to? Like, what are you guys listening to from the 50s, 60s? Like, I'm curious.
okay. I mean like just like the like iconic songs like from the 50s down I mean I went through an Elvis phase when I was a teenager. Um my dad he put me on to like older music from like his dad, like Spanish records and like Spanish songs too. My dad was like a teen in the 80s, so he taught me like all these like 80s hits. And at the time, it's funny, like I didn't like them. I'm trying to think. We listened to like a lot of ABBA. Um,
Dancing Queen, huh?
yeah,
That's
I'm trying to
awesome.
think. Yeah.
That's
Um,
interesting, the timing of when you found Lana Del Rey too, because like she definitely has an old soul, and it's like it kind of plays into some of those elements of like kind of like a modernized version of some 60s artist. I feel like sometimes like some of the
absolutely.
production, the big lush strings, very atmospheric, big sound. I just feel like the whole album's just like big sound, big almost surrounding feeling. Um,
Yeah.
which is really cool that she is able to kind of accomplish through production, and then her lyrics almost always like cut through it, and it like reminds you of like where you're at, like you're it's a modern artist. It's not you know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not old school, because she goes to some dark places for sure.
For sugar.
And her just honesty, I think. Let me see, what song was it? Carmen. That
Mm,
song, it's got a cool vibe. It's honestly, throughout listening to the album, I thought like musically it was the saddest song. Like it
mm,
kind of feels sad and
mm,
very dramatic. And it was interesting in like the songwriting, um, in the structure. Like she goes, the verses are kind of like very much like inside her head. Like I feel like in her feeling. And then the chorus is like how other people kind of saw her
mm.
somewhat, and like how she was kind of explaining, everybody likes her, but like Carmen inside feels like, you know,
Right.
crazy. And like my when I heard the song, I thought Carmen was herself. Do you get that too?
Oh, wait, no, I've never had that
No,
affected.
no. Yeah, it's because like in like previous songs she calls herself a queen,
Mm,
right? And then in that song she calls Carmen a queen. And I was like,
mm.
I'm curious if there's a connection in between that. But it was interesting. Like I think that type of her just honesty and in a different way of approaching how she really feels was kind of cool throughout the album.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so crazy. I'm gonna have to like listen to it again with that like in mind, like for sure.
I don't know if it's right. I mean, I guess there's not really a right interpretation, but it definitely feels like something I noticed. What was also interesting in her music, was the use of like crowd noise.
Yeah.
That was pretty like,
Like,
I was like, it was interesting. I was like, I don't know why. Like, as somebody who like makes music, why do you think you implement like crowd noise into some of these tracks?
mm. I feel like it like adds. I feel like I always struggle with like, okay, I feel like this doesn't sound like full, and I feel like this noises like that, like the most stupidest noises, like fill fill it up, I guess. It's just I like love. I think everything is so genius on that album.
I feel like it's all wonderful.
It really is.
So you said when you make music, you try to kind of feel the sound. I mean, using like noises like crowd noise and like inorganic, like musical noises, like I get that. What are some like other ways you try to do that? Like, are you using synths? Are you using strings? I know you touched on that. What are
Yeah.
some other approaches you have or have learned or started exploring with?
I think I feel like with strings, I kind of go to when I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel like it feels like I'm trying to make things like thick, you know? I'm like, this doesn't sound thick enough. Um, and I feel like strings help synths. I'm like, maybe I can like layer some or like add more like effect to them. I feel like yeah, like just exploring with like different plugins, sitting
Mhm.
around for hours and just like experimenting for sure.
It definitely can happen,
You're like,
huh?
oh,
There's so many different ways to make music now. It's exciting. Do you find it hard
yeah,
though, as an artist, sometimes? Like there's too many choices?
yeah, like it's definitely overwhelming. I mean, I feel like I watched like one YouTube tutorial and somebody like shares a secret, and I'm like, oh my God, like I could be doing that, you know? So yeah, there's just so much information out there now. I feel like it definitely gets overwhelming where you're just kind of like, I'm frozen.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that and feel that. What's how what's your music education like? How did you like start making music? Like what was that process like?
I started. mm, my parents like joke that like I guess I've always been drawn to music like as a child. I remember like my earliest memories. My parents at the time would like go to church. I was probably like 5 or 6. And I was just really drawn to it. Always trying to play on the piano, stuff like that. They were like, let's shut this kid up. Let's put him in piano lessons. And my dad was like, damn, we're gonna waste money on piano lessons and like buy her a keyboard and shit. But I remember they asked me very specifically, core memory when I was like 6, and they were like, do you want to take piano lessons? I was like, yeah. Even though I was like very shy as a kid. And so I learned how to read music at like a really young age. I still don't read music. I just like don't like it. I feel like I don't have like the patience for it. And I just do a lot of stuff by like ear. I learned like guitar when I was like 12 or 11, I think. And just kind of like would try to do like a few guitar lessons when I first, started. And I was just like, at that time, I was looking into books and like different chords and stuff like that. And that was like around the time where I like discovered YouTube, a beautiful moment in our lives. And from there, it was just like guitar YouTube tutorial, like this song and like ultimate guitar chords. You know what I mean?
hmm
So it was really just like self-taught. But from there, music production, like learning how to produce was like its own different like game for sure.
It's a
Uh,
whole art form, like in and of itself. Like
it's
it's a whole thing. Definitely
it
modern
really
production
is.
is crazy.
Yeah. Um, I started producing when I think I was like 19 or 20. I went I went to Columbia in Chicago for a little bit, and I did study like music, and then I did like do some like audio recording like classes, I guess. But I didn't last very long. I did end up dropping out. So I learned a little bit there, but honestly I feel like YouTube University makes like that's really been how I've learned how to like produce music.
So what was the point, you're playing all these instruments that you're like, I'm gonna write my own song. Like I'm gonna write my own song and I'm gonna put it out. Like that's a big change, right? Because a lot of people play instruments, but it's a step to do that.
Absolutely. Like it's crazy. I think I growing up I was always like, oh, like I'm gonna make music, like I'm going to, it's gonna happen eventually. And I kind of had this like epiphany when I was in college, and I was like, it's either now or never, like I have to do it myself. Like nobody's gonna like come and see me and be like, you wanna, make a song or record a song or whatever. So I remember I like a very, I was a very like broke college student, and I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna buy some like small studio equipment. I got like the Scarlett, the red package, got a little MIDI keyboard, and I thought it was gonna be easy. I really did. I was like, I'll just play a few chords, record it, it's fine. Um, And I opened up Ableton and I was like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah. But I eventually, once I kind of got over the first hurdle, like made my first like reels, like produce my like own real song, I just like was like, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna upload it to SoundCloud, took like a random picture and like use Pixar to like edit it, and I was just like, okay, it's off into the world now. Um,
Was that hard to do?
like I think making my first song, like producing my first song, it was.
Was it
But
hard
at
to like
like
release it or were you like ready?
I
Were
was
you at a
ready.
point that you were like, I'm ready to do this thing?
I was like, I've been ready for this. It's an exciting time. It's like an exciting moment for sure. I think I get more scared now than I do when I first started. Because I was kind of like in a little bubble. I was a little like Delulu for sure. And now I think you put so much into it, like financially, emotionally, like mentally, and now I feel like it's worth more. Um, so it feels like a different pressure for sure now when I like release a song. So yeah.
Yes. Speaking of which, what do you have coming out? If people want to check out your music, what should they be listening to?
I am working on a lot of new music right now for sure. Perhaps an album. Some music videos are for sure happening this year. So yeah, that'll be coming soon. Once it starts getting warmer. Um yeah, for sure.
If somebody wants to check out some songs that you've put out, what would you suggest they start with?
I'd probably say that's hard. Um I'd probably say I guess checking out the newest. Like that feels like the most me at like the time the newest singles. Um Hurt You was the last one to come out and Another Day. So starting off with those, I feel yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, be sure to check them out, guys. And um, you're a great artist. I can't wait to see where you go.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, you definitely have a fun sound. I like what you're doing. And so excited to see you put out that album.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Yeah. Yeah. What's kind of the vibe? Can you give us a sneak peek of like what the vibe is going to be? Or like,
I,
do you have one?
yeah.
Well, yeah, you
The,
know.
the vibe unravels every day, you know what I mean? I feel like more kind of like touching like 80s pop vibes. I think I'm going to be just definitely going back to the roots for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
the roots with your dad on YouTube.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Who would have thunk it, you know?
So it always comes back in ways that you want to see it. Definitely as an artist, it's kind of cool to see that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, we are excited to hear it and thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.